Hi everyone and welcome. My name is Roberto Corona. I am an Italian anthroposopher and astrologer, and in this video we will talk about the last Mercury retrograde of the year, Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. Now in this picture you can see the orbit traced by Mercury from a geocentric perspective from the Earth, and as you can see in green, it creates 3 rings in the sky, and this happens 3 times a year and lasts roughly 3 weeks each. Highlighted in white, you can appreciate the points where Mercury makes a conjunction with the Sun. That can be a superior conjunction or an inferior conjunction, creating this beautiful pattern, which is a 6-pointed star in the sky. Now, what's special about this year, and we discussed about it in previous videos, is that Mercury has created these station rings in all 3 the Earth signs. And for this reason, we can say that Mercury has now completed an elemental triangle of Earth during 2023. Now, this is a more detailed list with the dates of Mercury retrograde during the year. And this year, Mercury stopped, as you can see, in Capricorn, then in Taurus, then in Virgo. And interestingly enough, now Mercury is going to stop again in Capricorn. This means that 2023 began and will end with Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. And that's the transit that we're going to be talking about in this video. So in general, we can say that the challenges brought about by Mercury this year have affected mainly the Earth element, which in astrology is the element of matter, working, practicality, and money. And we can add that among the 3 Earth signs, Capricorn is without any doubt the most challenging one. And this is because Capricorn expects from us to be strong, to take responsibility, and above all, to make it by ourselves. So let's now take a look at Mercury retrograde main steps. Now in this picture, you can see the different phases of Mercury retrograde. Starting from here, Mercury is still moving direct, and it entered the so-called shadow zone that you can see down there in orange on November 25. And in this orange zone, Mercury basically is starting slowing down more and more until it eventually stops, reaching its first station at 8 degrees 29 Capricorn. And it is going to reach the first station on December 13. Then Mercury, you can see that in red, starts moving retrograde, of course, and Mercury is slowly getting back to Sagittarius, reaching 22 degrees and 10 minutes Sagittarius on January 2nd, its second station. And finally, Mercury turns direct again to exit the shadow zone for good, only starting from January 21. So what's the general meaning of Mercury retrograde? Mercury rules thinking, the mind, communication, networking, but also all forms of interconnection, streets, public transportation, the internet, and so on. For this reason, when Mercury turns retrograde, it creates delays, slowdowns, misunderstandings in this era of life. The cosmic mind basically turns inward and generates frustration whenever we want to insist on dealing with the outside world rather than focusing within. In fact, Mercury retrograde in general is good for introspection and inner work, shadow work. And this energy allows us to turn our minds inwardly to better understand and process, resolving our internal rather than external issues. But if we keep wanting to direct this energy out, then we will find it a little bit difficult to do so because it's like swimming against the current. Now, with Mercury retrograde in Capricorn in particular, the mind focuses more on our personal goals and our personal fulfillment. And this, of course, includes our career, but in a more adult sense, if you will. And this means that Mercury in Capricorn represents a mindset that wants us to be more autonomous, independent, and self-reliant. And in order to get to the top, we can do it, yes, but we need to do it making it by ourselves. And for this reason, this transit could lead to issues with authority figures as well, such as the government or our boss. And why is that? Because we are asked to process our relationship with authority to learn to become more free and independent from it. And in other words, we have to learn not to rely on somebody else to control our job or reminding us what we need to be doing. We have to learn to do it by ourselves. Now, this is a looping animation of Mercury retrograde. Mercury makes many aspects during the station ring, but simply put, we can divide these aspects into two phases. Now, in the first phase, Mercury is making a long sextile with Venus. Here's Venus. As you can see, it is making this blue connection with Mercury, and that's a sextile. And on top of that, as you can see, Venus is doing it from Scorpio. Now, then we have Mercury making a trine with Jupiter, this green line connecting Mercury to Jupiter in Taurus. In addition to that, you can spot quickly two sextiles that Mercury is doing with Saturn. Now, this is phase 1. In phase 2, Mercury is making two hard aspects. The first is a very long square with Neptune. Neptune is here. As you can see, there's a red line connecting it to Mercury. And then Mercury is basically going back to Sagittarius, meeting again the malefic planet Mars. And this is a long conjunction, or longer than usual, and it is a challenging one. So the turning point of these two phases, phase 1 and phase 2, is December 23rd, the day of Mercury's ingress back into Sagittarius. Also note that Mercury turns retrograde on December 13th, which is the day of Saint Lucy, which is, by the way, also a pagan archetype, which is very interesting. And this is happening the same day that we have the new moon in Sagittarius, which we will talk about in a dedicated video. Now, the archetype of Lucy is connected to sight, and it is also a reference to the star that is going to be in conjunction with Mercury right on December 13th during its first stationing. So basically, Mercury is stopping on December 13th right on a fixed star, which is like not really a fixed star. It is a globular cluster. It is cluster M22, also called the Archer's Phase, in Latin Facies. You can see that here. Basically, Mercury is right in close conjunction with this cluster. And interestingly enough, in the astrological tradition, star clusters were often linked by analogy to vision problems, difficulties in seeing things, in bringing them into focus. And in fact, Mercury will have all around this star glitters. It's like the light of Mercury, it is going to get messy to the naked eye, so to speak. And for this reason, it's like having these problems, not being able to focus on things much. Now, we can interpret this in this way, because the forces of the mind represented by Mercury, they're not going to be able to see things clearly, see things for what they really are, leading us to making mistakes. Now, in addition to that, this cluster has the nature of the Sun and Mars and could lead to actual sight problems in a physical sense. So we must be careful with that as well, but it doesn't need to be like physical problems. It can be, in a metaphorical sense, not being able to focus on things much. And to strengthen this archetype of sight, in a certain sense, also redeeming it, is the archetype of Saint Lucy, which, by the way, is a pagan goddess as well, on December 13th, right? Now, this is a very beautiful archetype. And you can see here a picture of this young lady with this candles put on this crown. This is a representation of Saint Lucy. And this saint that was blinded represent the forces of spiritual light. In fact, the name Lucy comes from the Latin word lux, which means light. And this is a force capable of leading us and guiding us spiritually, even in those moments when the light of the intellect is lacking or it is blurry, the mind is confused by this other star that we mentioned. Now let's take a look at the images of the aspects so we can really appreciate this division of phase 1 and phase 2. Now we have the aspects that Mercury is making on December and January, and this line is December 23rd. Now, as you can see in the first phase, Mercury is still in Capricorn and it is making a long sextile with Venus, and Venus is in Scorpio. A nice trine with Jupiter, look at that, very long trine. And we have these two sextiles with Saturn as well. Then we have December 23rd, and then we enter phase 2. We have this super long square with Neptune, and on top of that, the conjunction with Mars. Now, how can we interpret, first of all, these benefic aspects with the two benefic planets and with Saturn in phase 1? We can interpret them from a physical perspective as an opportunity to slow things down, especially at work, retracing our steps, especially because we are dealing with sextile with Saturn, which is, again, about responsibility. And all this, of course, in the name of recovering that individual impulse, those responsibilities, yes, that we mentioned before, but also with the trine with Jupiter, we have an opportunity to settle the accounts, to take care more of our finances, especially because Jupiter is in Taurus. Now, from a soul perspective, I want to say something about this sextile with Venus, because Venus is in Scorpio, right? And this is an opportunity, it is a favorable time to process the shadows in our relationship, especially because Mercury in Capricorn also represents forces of our individualism. So basically we can ask ourselves, am I relying too much on the couple? Or am I afraid of relying on the other person? Because in general, we can tend to be more dependent or more avoidant in the overall spectrum of the attachment style. And we can process it during this time. This is a good time to do it. Now, from December 23rd onwards, things definitely get more problematic, and we already said why, because we have these two challenging aspects, and we can interpret them in a physical sense as Christmas chaos, basically. Problems with public transportation, with traveling. So I recommend being more organized in this sense, or more organized than usual when traveling around Christmas. And the conjunction with Mars, which is the god of war, can definitely lead to communication issues and fights. And this is because it is quite difficult with Mercury in Sagittarius to keep quiet, because Mercury in Sagittarius is loud. We talk too much, we say too much, and in this sense, we can take advantage of the sextile with Venus to process these relationship issues before they explode during the holidays. Now, as you can see, these hard aspects last longer than usual, but we can count on the fact that from January 2nd at least, Mercury turns direct again. But anyways, to be extra sure, we should wait until, let's say, January 14th here. Now, in order to see in which area of your life Mercury retrograde is going to affect you, please check in your birth chart in which astrological house fall both 8 degrees Capricorn and 22 degrees Sagittarius. But in general, we can divide this Mercury retrograde process into these 2 phases divided by December 23rd. So phase 1, we can slow down, take on responsibility in both our job and our relationship before December 23rd. And phase 2, after that, we need to be more cautious when traveling and communicating, especially with our partner, to avoid arguments. So thanks for watching. If you want to support my work, as always, you can like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell not to miss out on future astrological insights. I am Roberto Corona. See you in the next video.